Welcome to this webinar on Cisco 911 compliance testing. Today we're joined with Stack 8, who are going to share some of the product and services that they have in this space. In terms of the agenda, Stack 8 will give you a brief overview of themselves in a little minute, and then I'll take you through some of the new US laws that have been introduced and discuss how to validate 911 calling and also dispatch location. And then we'll have a little explanation on things to consider for 911 hot desk testing as well. And there's a short demonstration on how you can test 911 services using PhoneView. We'll then hand over it to Stack 8, who will give you a demonstration of their platform and an explanation of some of their services, and we'll finish off with a Q&A. So I'll just hand it over to Stack 8.
So that you can deliver on your promises. That's really what we're all about. And we do that by selling, supporting, managing, and developing unified communications tools and applications for all you guys to really be empowered to use that technology and again deliver on that promise. So we're always looking to kind of be that eighth layer for you guys. That's where the name Stack 8 comes from. We're the eighth layer of the OSI stack, the human layer. So we're looking to create a long-term relationship with you guys, a really meaningful and deep relationship, so we can really help you guys get the most out of your systems and get the most value.
That's great. Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
Okay, so the main thing that's the driving factor behind the webinar, why there's maybe some other things to consider, are Carey's Law and Raybomb's Act that's been introduced now. You need to probably do your own research, just double check for dates and relevant items to your environment, because there's when the laws come into effect, and then there's when you have to be compliant by for certain types of scenarios. For example, one of the ones that's a little bit further down the line is hot desking and soft phone compliance is a couple of years away, as far as I understand. So you probably just need to double check those actual dates, but they were introduced this year. In a simple way, Carey's Law is just the ability to dial 911 without the 9 prefix. Now, I'm sure a lot of phone systems are probably set up that way already, but now it's obviously mandatory, so you need to kind of double check that that's all implemented correctly and consistently. Another component, which is probably a bit more complicated compared to most kind of default installations, is that you do have to notify the front desk or equivalent security department if a 911 call is taken into effect. Now, we don't have an application for that. We're really here to help you test it and prove it, but it's just something to bear in mind. When it comes to Raybomb's Act, then that's really about location information. So that's making sure that when a 911 call is placed, that the correct dispatch location is mapped to effectively to a degree, the DDI number that can relate to, which maps back to the physical location. Now, not immediately, but down the line, it will need to be implemented to support hot desk scenarios as well. Now, Stack 8 will be able to talk on some of the kind of third-party components that you might need to take care of some of the more complex situations, but we're just going to talk about the more immediate elements of dialability and validation of the information. So when it comes to validating 911 calls themselves, there's a possibility that an existing system might need the dial plan updated. So again, with any change that you make, you need to prove that change is taking effect correctly. Or if you get new sites getting provisioned, you need to double check that they're all correct and consistent. And ultimately, when you do perform those 911 test calls, to validate it, you do need to have two-way audio with the public service answer point, so you can, verbally confirm with the operator that it is a test call, etc. So, although we have the ability to monitor a phone, so you can listen in to the audio remotely, what you have to do when it comes to actually, speaking to somebody sort of full two-way audio, is the current kind of recommendation that we have is it's actually quite simple. It's basically conference in whichever person that's going to speak to the 911 operator. I'll try and maybe describe this a couple of times, and I've got a little demo about it as well. But effectively, if you have a remote phone as in any phone in your estate, desk phone, etc., and you need to test it, what you can actually do without physically going there is you can remotely control that phone you want to test. You can basically make it dial 911 and effectively immediately conference in any other number. And that means that it might be a mobile number, it might be another desk phone, etc. And that means that in effect, you're testing the dialability of 911 from that remote phone, which is, the validation component. But immediately you're bringing in a conference call so that when it does connect, assuming that it obviously succeeds, you can have that dialogue with the 911 operator to tell them that it is a test call, and you don't accidentally cause some service to get dispatched or other kind of complications. So it's obviously important to be able to include that two-way dialogue. Now, what we have here as the last kind of bullet point is an example of how you can do that with phone view. Now, we have a demo on this, but I'll just talk you through what that actually entails. So with that macro command, you've effectively got a call operation to dial, for example, the 911 number directly. There's a brief pause just to allow it to route and connect. It's, might not need, by default, CMD : pause will wait for 1 second. You could reduce that, you could even increase it if you want to, but 1 second should be fine. And it will then immediately conference in whichever number you provide. Now, we've got a little bracket there indicating you might put in your mobile number, but ultimately, that could be another internal number, the desk phone that you're sitting at if you're in the office. It could be your soft phone if you're remote, or anything that's suitable. And what that's now, so you're going to get called into that conference party, into your mobile, for example. As soon as you answer that, you will then be connected with the person service answer point, and you'll be able to talk to the operator and explain it's a test call, etc. So the good thing by putting in a macro like that is it's a one-button action. You don't have to dial a number and then initiate a conference and possibly have fat fingers and misdial and leave the phone kind of hanging loose and talking to the operator and nobody there to communicate with them. So that's why it's quite good to compile it in a macro like that. Now, the next thing is to, once you've validated the dialability of 911, etc., is you need to ultimately validate the dispatch location. Now, most likely, once you do that 911 call to the operator, you've got their attention, you've got their time. You might need to reserve their time. That's quite common practice. You might, contact your local representative for that public service answer point and book some time. They'll probably give you a quiet time that you can call in and make those test calls. But once you are speaking with the operator, you can then ask them to validate the dispatch location. So given that you're testing a phone or sets of phones, possibly one at a time remotely, and you want to prove that the data on file that you have for that device matches what the person service access point is actually getting, that's really what this is about. So you typically schedule your test calls. You'd ask them to validate it. And pretty much that's as simple as it is. However, some systems, and we've checked a few, I mean, it depends on the provider for your 911 services, your trip lines, etc. But quite a lot of them seem to provide 933 as a common way of testing. And for facilities where they do provide that, it's really quite handy. So you don't have to speak to a person. So there's no risk of accidentally, triggering an emergency call as such and dispatching somebody. So if you do have a test facility, it's quite common. It's 933 is the number that's used. And if that is the case, usually what happens is you get the remote phone, you get it to dial 933. It will usually connect to an IVR service that will then kind of play back what the dispatch location is for the number that it received the call from, etc. And then you can listen to that, and you can via audio validate that that's the right information. So that's a scenario where you can use phone view's remote audio feature, because you only need one-way audio in that case. You just need the ability to listen in. So quite simply, you can get your remote phone or phones that are 933, monitor, listen to the dispatch location that's announced, and then double check that with your records. Now, one thing that's useful as well is within PhoneView, we capture things like subnet information, as well as device pool and other kind of physical located configuration data. But we also can gather switch and switchboard data. So it's quite common that your dispatch locations are mapped to switches and things like that from a physical entity. So it means that when you're browsing through the devices that you want to test, you can kind of go switch by switch, filter to all devices on a particular switch, choose one or more, perform your 933 test, for example, or your 911 test, and then kind of unfilter that and then move down to the next one. So it saves you having to track and find lots of different MAC addresses of devices to test with. You can just use the kind of criteria that we already have inside PhoneView to make that a little bit easier. Now, something a little bit more complicated, but it's a little bit down the line, thankfully, is 911 hot desk testing. So, you still need to validate it, but obviously dynamic nature can make it a little more complicated. But some of the things that you can do with PhoneView to make that a little bit easier is the fact you can log phones in and out using PhoneView, so you don't have to use the XML service on the phone. There's actually native API support. A component that we also support is extensibility across cluster. It takes a little bit extra work to set PhoneView up, etc., to work in that particular situation, but it is all possible. So that means even if you have a visiting phone going from one cluster to another, all the complexities about hot desking that goes with that, we can actually control that phone when it's in EMCC mode and allow you to do those same calls and tests, etc. We obviously work with soft phones now. Now, we work generically with the soft phone device, but obviously some third-party 911 solutions require like a client or something that the user populates their location information in, so we don't touch that aspect of it. But certainly we can control and drive the soft phone itself. We can even do remote audio, etc., with soft phones too, so you can do it for 933 as well. As I kind of mentioned previously, you can do the remote audio and remote conference for doing the testing with your 911 or, if available, your 933 services. And another convenience is those built-in virtual endpoints, basically soft phone instances you can register locally in PhoneView. This means it's nice and convenient. You don't have to go away and spin up some other device, etc., to talk and listen on the call. Okay, that's it in terms of the kind of slide content from myself. What I do want to show you though is a brief demonstration. Now, there's two parts to this demo, because I'm just going to play a little video that we recorded. The first part just has the actual conference components. It's going to dial 911 and then you've got two-way audio where you can talk to the operator. And the second part is a 933. I've not done a demonstration with extensibility or hot desking. Didn't really have time to fit all that in, but it's just a logical extension of what you're about to see. What you're seeing is just me dialing into an IVR system with some pre-recorded. It's not a real 911 call as such. I've tried to make it sound like one, but it's just a fake call, so to speak. We're trying to represent it. So let me flip over to the video.
Welcome. In this short demonstration, we're going to show you how to test 911 services. So if I choose a physical phone, which is remote, and I want to be able to test 911, because we need to speak to the actual operator, you can use, for example, a simple macro to dial that number and then conference in a local phone. So I've got a remote phone here. I'm going to send that macro.
Operator, what is your emergency?
Hello, this is not an emergency call. This is a test. Do you have a moment to verify my emergency information?
Certainly, please continue.
Can you verify the address that you received my call from?
I have the West Wing, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, as your location.
That's perfect. Thanks very much for your help.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
There we go. We'll just hang up the call. And so that's us able to listen in remotely by conferencing in a local phone, a soft phone in this case, or it could be a mobile phone. Simply the macro structure here is to dial 911, wait a little while for it to connect, and immediately initiate a conference into the party who's going to join the conversation with the 911 operator, because obviously you need to have a two-way dialogue with them. Now, what you can also do, and some providers have this facility, is you can actually dial a 933 service or an equivalent to that can actually have an IVR prompt which will read back the address for you. So in this case, I'm going to again go to this remote phone. So again, this is to prove where it is. And a good thing if you're running through these devices, if you get a few of them, is we've got lots of information in terms of location, subnet, switch information that you can use to filter and select individual remote phones to work with. Now, in this case, I'm going to dial a 933 service, and it's simply going to read back location information. So if I quickly place a call, and then I'm immediately going to monitor it. So let me do that. So we call, we monitor.
Associated with this number as the West Wing, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington.
There we are. In this case, it just read out the location information for us, so we could hear that in audio and confirm that information is correct.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciate that. So definitely a great way to test 911 calls, and that's definitely something that everybody will need to be doing very quickly, since those two laws, Kerry's Law and Raybaum's-Zack, are coming into play. So just wanted to kind of give you, before we get into what sort of E911 solutions could be implemented to better be compliant to those two new laws. I just wanted to give you a super quick overview of Stack 8. Carl, if you can flip to the next slide. A lot of you know us, like I said earlier, from our SMACS provisioning tool. But again, Stack 8 is really a full service organization around unified communications. There's really not much within the UC portfolio we don't do. So from telephony services to WebEx video conferencing and integrating all that with your phone system as well, to making sure that your remote employees now with this shelter in place, confinement, whatever, have to be functional and so on and so forth. We've been heavily involved doing those kinds of things. We have a strong specialty in contact center as well. So call flow deployments, whether it's on-premise or cloud-based contact centers, we also get involved in many of those kinds of projects. And as part of our managed services and cloud offerings, we're able to manage your environment or co-manage your environments, really help you, again, leverage as much as you can from your investment in those technologies, make sure that you can concentrate on what your business does, and making sure that the technology can address that. So, make sure your system is always running, making sure everything is optimized, giving you a bit more time in your day to do more meaningful stuff, and we'll take care of the firefighting type of a thing, and really help you kind of make sure your infrastructure, whether it's on premise or cloud-based, is always up and running. So that's really what we're all about. And of course, the first pillar, the automation, is all around the different software tools that we develop, SMACS being one of them, but we have many more, again, to help provisioning, to help you get the most out of the utilization of your system, get more visibility into what's going on with reporting and whatnot. So many different things we do, again, to help you deliver on that promise and use the technology properly. So back to our topic at hand, which is E911 and making sure that we're all compliant with those new laws. There's many different ways that can be implemented, and we'll see kind of three different options. And it all depends on your requirements. It all depends on the size of your company. It all depends on the way your system is architected, and so on and so forth. There's no one size fits all type of a solution. So the first one, as the first piece of the law, as Stephen alluded to, is your system needs to be able to dial 911 without a prefix. That's easily fixed by just making sure that your dial plan is built as such. There's a proper route pattern or translation pattern that with 911 that really directs you right out of to the PSTN as soon as possible. So that's relatively easily handled. And every single phone in your organization, conference room phone, user phone, what have you, they all have to be able to dial 911. If you have PSTN access, then you need to be able to dial 911 and get to the public safety answering points. So one of the first things that can also be implemented then to be compliant with those laws is that notion of emergency call handlers within CUCM. It's been around since CUCM 11.0. And basically what that does is based on the configuration of your device or the device pool that that device is part of, we will be able to derive, or the system will be able to derive the location of that phone, and basically send the call out to the PSTN and the public safety answering point based on using a phone number based on the location that is assigned to the device. So it's basically using a mapped ELIN. The ELIN is a emergency line identification number. It's just basically a phone number that is registered through your telco with the public safety answering point. So there's basically the address is mapped in the what's called the ALI database, the Automatic Location Identifier database. Basically what the public safety folks will look at when they receive the call. They will get your phone number. They will get the right phone number because it was sent by the right emergency call handler in CUCM, and that way they receive the right address and they're able to dispatch the police or firefighters or whatever to the right location. Of course, there are a few caveats to this, or a few special cases, I guess, when phones physically move from one location to another, or maybe from one part of a big campus to another. Maybe you have a very large distribution floor or warehouse, or just a very large office campus. If the phone gets recycled and moves from one area to a different area, which would have potentially different ELINs because they're mapped to different physical addresses or different locations within your campus, well, again, that static assignment won't really work, and the phone configuration needs to be updated properly so that there's no the dynamic aspect of phones moving isn't quite supported with emergency call handlers. It's also not great for soft phones or remote phones that would be connecting back to your organization through expressway mobile remote access. Again, because the 911 emergency call funnels through your gateway and your CUCM environment, the call will be output to the public safety answering point that is attached to the PSTN circuit that you have. So if you're based out of San Jose and that you're traveling, your soft phone is now really somewhere around, I don't know, Chicago, for example. If I make a phone call, a 911 call using my soft phone, the call will be going out of the PSTN circuit in my home base in San Jose, and unfortunately get to a public safety operator in San Jose, which of course cannot dispatch the public safety in Chicago where I'm temporarily traveling or whatnot. So not great there. There is a solution to that, but emergency call handlers, it has that limitation, I guess. So the 911 calls is the next item. The 911 calls do get routed to the proper PSAP. Yes. Sorry, Carl. They do get to the proper PSAP, but only if you're within your own location. If you travel, like we said, and all that, not great. If you have centralized PSTN as well, that's another limitation. So if you have 10 locations and they all funnel through a single PSTN access, say again in San Jose, same problem. There is no way to dispatch public safety operators in a different location other than by using different alternative solutions to this. So you have to build on that, as we'll see. And the final thing is in terms of, again, the second part of Kerry's law, which is to send a notification to the local security personnel. That will also not work. You could pair CUCM emergency call handlers with Cisco paging server, which will able to be, trigger a notification to be sent by email if a 911 call is being done. But unfortunately, by itself, UCM natively cannot notify local security personnel. You need to add either Cisco paging server or, as we'll see in the next slide, Cisco emergency responder, which is a more advanced solution. So, Carl, I'll let you. Thank you, sir. So, second option, as I alluded to, is Cisco emergency responder. It may be a unknown a piece of or unknown component of Cisco's collaboration portfolio. It is included for everybody who has a Flex enterprise agreement. It's there. It's part of the Flex agreement if you have an enterprise agreement. So Flex EA, it's there. You just need to deploy it or call us, and we'll help you do that. One of the big things that emergency responder solves is that whole location assignment and the movement of phones. So there's tracking of where the phone, dynamic tracking of where the phone is physically located based on a bunch of different things. It can integrate with your switches and basically determine what switch port the phone is physically connected into. So based on that, we know that port number 1 of switch number 1 is Eric's office, and that way I'm able to know dynamically that I'm connected. I'm making 911 call out of a phone in Eric's office and dispatching the call to the right public safety operator. So that takes care of that. There's a little checkbox there on the physical move, so it's all supported. Again, the location is sent to the right public safety answering point as long as basically I'm going to be sending the right emergency number or the ELIN based on my dynamic location. So that's great. But unfortunately, if I'm outside of the campus, so soft phone or remote phone, again, not supported natively with CR. We need to add to CR, as we'll see right after in the next slide. And of course, the calls again can be routed to the proper PSAP only if I'm within my campus. If I'm using centralized PSTN, again, we have that limitation there. It's only going to be routed to the public safety answering point that's attached to the PSTN circuit, which is used to egress the call. So limited a little bit there, but fixable. The notifications are part of this. So the security personnel, when CR determines where you're located, the local security personnel will be able to receive either a phone call or an email of the location. It can also be a web notification, and you can also support quite a bit more locations. So if you're a bigger enterprise, more than 100 locations, which was a limitation of the native call handlers, 12,500 locations is supported with CR, which is quite big. If you have more than locations than that, typically a second UCM cluster with a second emergency responder cluster would be leveraged in those types of situations. One of the cool things, it was there with the previous slide as well with emergency call handlers, but with emergency responder as well, extension mobility is supported. So if I log in on a phone, it will be using basically the physical location of the physical phone itself, not of my configure location on my device profile. So that always works whether you're using CR or the native UCM call handlers. So moving on to what else can we do to kind of solve the soft phone problem as well as the centralized PSTN problem. Basically, the solution is to pair CR with services from third parties, either Intrado, who used to be called the West Security Services, or Red Sky. So those two companies in North America have basically connections, backend connections to every single public safety answering point in Canada and the US. So they're able to redirect the call to any proper PSAP based on your location. So all the dynamic tracking of your location is still done by CER. Whenever a 911 call is being made, I know the physical location of that person, and the call will be routed to Intrado or Red Sky. rather than going directly out to the PSTN to the PSAP. So that's where they plan. So they they intercept the call, they get the call directly, and then based again on the emergency line number that's being used to make that 911 call, they look up in the database and send the call out to the proper PSAP based on the address you're at. So if you're using centralized PSTN in this case, no problem, that will work perfectly well. They will receive a phone number. They know that it is tied to an address somewhere else, no issue. They will, in the back end, turn around and route that call to the proper public safety operator in the right location, and everything is well. In addition, for soft phones and the remote phones, what they do basically is, in both companies, there's a desktop application you can install both on Windows and Mac. And as soon as a new location is being detected, the user will be prompted to enter their address. And of course, saved addresses can be pushed in there, so they can only pick from a drop-down menu. And that way, basically the address gets updated right away in Intrado's database or Red Sky's database. And if a 911 call is being made, them having again all the backend connections to every single public safety operators, they're going to be able to redirect that call based on the physical location of the remote worker. So it's basically with pairing Cisco Emergency Responder, which is of course a Cisco product, with a third-party service from Intrado and Red Sky, and CR supports those two organizations natively. It's all built into CR. You do have to subscribe to Intrado and Red Sky services, but you just need to basically enter a few pieces of information and configure CR properly. And instead of routing the calls out to the PSTN the kind of standard way, CR will simply route the call to Intrado and Red Sky and take care of that. So that's really the way, if you have a complex architecture, you have remote workers, which is pretty much the case for every organization these days. If you have centralized PSTN as well, if you have many locations, the combination of Cisco Emergency Responder and Intrado or Red Sky is really the way to go. That's what gives you the broadest support for every single use case, and with this, you're fully compliant with both Kerry's Law and Ray-Baum's Act. There you go.
Yeah. Hey guys. So I was going to take a few minutes here to just kind of go over SMACS, our software solution, and how it could potentially help you guys be compliant with Kerry's Law. So just at a high level, SMACS is really a tool used for day-to-day provisioning to really offload all the complexities down to your level 1 help desk for non-technical folks. You don't need to know anything about Call Manager, Unity, UCCX, any of these Cisco UC tools to be able to use SMACS. We're really trying to pass that off to level 1s. What we really lean on some business intelligence and lean on a clean and intuitive UI to really achieve this. And you can see this here through our beautiful 360 view. You can see here how right then and there, a little Android, a Jabber Android device was created in a single click. We provide end users with this simple interactive 360 view where you can just click to add and remove things and really allow you to really offload that 90% of work off to the help desk. How we're different than other tools is really we do believe that we do have the easiest tool out there. There's no templates or jobs required to add or remove things. You can really just easily find a user, go to the 360 view. It's entirely interactive. It's 100% live with the information that is in your call manager to be able to go ahead and add and remove and actually debug certain things. That's one of the other key differentiators is really we do provide a misconfiguration feedback or outlier feedback, allowing you to see currently if a phone is got issues. Is it registered or not? Does it have the right CSS on there or not? It's really always a two-way communication. And lastly, of course, we do provide a really nice DID management interface where you can see all of the available versus unavailable phone numbers as you need to assign new numbers. So no more fumbling with spreadsheets or looking at what numbers you have from your telco. Really just a very simple and intuitive UI to go ahead and assign numbers. Lastly, of course, our tool is natively integrated. We do have a nice little shiny phone effects button there. So as you're provisioning a phone or modifying a phone, you can actually go ahead and remote control it right within the simple click of a button, and it'll tie right into the view and phone effects. What I was going to do right now is just quickly show you a quick live demo of the tool of SMACS and show you how the integration with phone effects works. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my Google Chrome. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to start really from the beginning. So I'm just going to log out here. You should all see my browser. And the first thing that you'll notice is, of course, that the application is a web-based application. So you don't need to install anything on your desktop, nothing. You really just open your favorite browser, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, you name it. You can log into the tool with your Active Directory credentials. And you are then taken to what we like to call the Google-style homepage. And this is really an example of where we try and bring as much simplicity to your end users as possible. From this page, you can search for a phone, a MAC address, an extension, a first name, a last name, a user ID. It doesn't matter. It all funnels through this one simple search. So I can type, for example, Carl. I am returned all the Carls in the UC environment, including Carl Caruani, myself down here. And if I click edit, you'll see here that I'm taken to what we call the 360 view. So this view here, 100% interactive. You know, if I want to give them a jabber for iPhone, it's just a matter of clicking the tile, and within seconds, it's automatically going to build the device, set the owner ID, associate the user. All that stuff is done. Diving into this 8851, we can see here now that we can make modifications to the phone. And if I click the phone effects icon here, it will actually load the remote control of said phone. So within a few seconds, I'm in a great view where I can provision the phone, make changes to the phone, and then view those changes and even interact with the phone and interact with it there. So in terms of Carey's Law, being able to place the test call remotely, conference yourself in as you place the call from the phone, you can do all these things within seconds entirely remotely. The last thing I'll mention, and I'll remind you, everything is live with the call manager. So if I really went into the CUCM and let's go just like mess up this phone a bit, maybe put an invalid CSS on that phone, right? That could potentially affect some 911 calling. So if I just go here and search for that device, 05FA, here it is. We can see here the phone is correctly configured in Las Vegas. It's got all the right settings, but let's go ahead and mess up this phone. Let's put Los Angeles, let's say, instead of Las Vegas. I click save. If we now go take a look at the phone in SMACS, immediately now you have these potential issues highlighted for you, telling you, hey, this is not the correct value. So you can easily address the problem, fix it right then and there. Maybe I can make a change to the speed dial. I'll put a new number there, make my changes, click save. And, within seconds, we should actually see the phone. Now that I've made a change to the CSS, I made a change to the speed dial. We should see, there we go. The new value there on the phone is done. The configurations have been pushed, and I can interact with the phone and retest it within seconds. So really a great tool to push down to your help desk or non-technical folks, facilities managers. You don't really need to know, once again, you don't really need to know anything about Call Manager or Unity or anything to really go ahead and build, provision, deprovision, or even day-to-day make changes or debug existing configurations. That's it. And that sort of concludes our